cancel the parade. Somebody call Carole King's agent. And can we get a refund on these yellow balloons? I'm Nathan Baker, sitting in for the vacationing John Phillips, and this is After Hours. Yes, the Welcome Home Bo Bergdahl celebration in Haley, Idaho has been canceled. Let's, for the moment, set aside such questions as whether or not he was a deserter, which he was, or whether or not he was an avowed enemy sympathizer who went in search of the Taliban on purpose to help them attack his fellow soldiers, which it's actually beginning to seem like he might have been. Let's assume for the purpose of today's show that it was a great idea to swap one U.S. soldier for 5 high-value Taliban leaders being held in Guantanamo Bay, thus establishing that not only do we negotiate with terrorists, but encouraging them to try and capture as many others as possible so they can get more of their creepy friends back. Let's also ignore the fact that these creepy guys will likely immediately start plotting against us from their luxury compound in Qatar, where they are totally unsupervised by any of us infidels and will probably have to be taken out again at great expense and risk to our service members at some point in the future. Let's assume, just for the sake of today's show, that this was not, on its own, the worst idea in the history of Afghanistan, which, if you know anything about the history of Afghanistan, is really, really, really saying something. Having assumed all of that, and I know it's tough, let's explore what the heck the administration thought they were doing. Not what they did, but what they thought they were doing. They chose to make a big deal out of this. The president had a splashy press conference announcing the exchange with Bergdahl's mom and dad by his side.
This morning, I called Bob and Jannie Bergdahl and told them that after nearly 5 years in captivity, their son Bo is coming home.
According to NBC Chief White House correspondent Chuck Todd, they expected this to be met with euphoria.
That wasn't necessarily what they were saying on Sunday. On Sunday, I think they thought there would be some euphoria around this, that the only POW that was remaining in Afghanistan, that there would be a rally around the flag. That didn't happen.
It's like when your cat drops a dead bird on your pillow, expecting you to be thrilled with the gift. Look what I got you. But it didn't exactly work out that way. In fact, it was met with bafflement on both sides of the political aisle, with many asking, what were they thinking? Was the administration so reeling from the VA scandal that they spastically rolled this out to try and regain the confidence of vets? Or is the president and his tight circle of advisors so hell-bent on closing Gitmo in spite of overwhelming political opposition that they leapt at any excuse to get rid of some of the detainees? If, as the LA Times editorialized, they were going to release these prisoners anyway, why not get something, anything, in exchange? Or do they honestly believe that this will somehow result in rapprochement with the Taliban? Why did they ignore members of their own party who had, for years, opposed just this kind of prisoner swap? The White House actually apologized after the fact to Senator Dianne Feinstein, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee and a Democrat. If the president didn't reach out to her, it just goes to show that his administration is operating with little or no input from the elder statesmen, and in Feinstein's case, very, very, very elder statesmen, of his own party. And who the heck wrote Susan Rice's talking points this time?
He served the United States with honor and distinction, and we'll have the opportunity eventually to learn what has transpired in the past years.
Is she just too stupid to spend 5 minutes on Google to fact-check what is about to come out of her mouth? Now that the president's cadre of rabid supporters are trying to change the narrative, they are accusing Bergdahl's fellow soldiers of unfairly swift-boating him.
I've had a few aides describe it to me as, we didn't know that they were going to swift-boat Bergdahl.
Will that argument stick? And is Bergdahl more likely to be embraced as a left-wing hero now that his apparent anti-American sympathies are coming to light? To some, any soldier who doesn't renounce war and go join the side of the terrorists the freedom fighters, is an evil cog in the evil machine of American imperialism. Will they rally around him? And how is Hillary Clinton going to handle this can of worms? Here to explore these questions and much, much more is our After Hours panel. Host of the Tammy Bruce Radio Extravaganza, available at tammybruce.com, Tammy Bruce. Filling in for our own fair-minded civil rights attorney, Leo Terrell, who had to be in court today with a client, not because he was picked up for being drunk and disorderly or anything, is attorney and radio host Ebony K. Williams. You can get her at ebonykwilliams.com. And author and PJTV contributor Scott Ott, whose political satire you can find on Amazon.com. Tammy, let's start with you.
I have no opinions about any of these things.
Well,
I didn't even know what you were talking about.
What was the main motivation for this from the White House? Do you think this was about recovering from the VA scandal, or closing Gitmo, or rapprochement with the Taliban?
I think it was everything. I think it's like one of those Russian dolls where there's like a new doll under each, you peel the levels away and you get more. I think they actually thought that this was going to be a bonanza on every single thing that was affecting them. They probably thought they couldn't believe their luck that somebody figured this out to do this. But what it shows you is a number of things. One, that they are that disconnected. This is a monumentally damaging self-inflicted wound. It's astounding that they really do want to close Gitmo, and they thought this would be a good way to do it. They really didn't look back and think, look, the Michael Hastings Rolling Stone article that detailed what Bergdahl was all about was just from 2012.
This was saying the email he sent to his parents where he was distressed with the mission in Afghanistan.
He sent back his uniforms in a box to his parents before he left the area, before he disappeared in Afghanistan. That tells you he did not expect to come back and was doing something quite dramatic. So these are things, when you think about the difference between governing and just watching out for yourself. We have an administration that is admired in groupthink, is completely disconnected, is obsessed with winning a news cycle, and not caring at all about not only governing, but apparently what any of this really means. It's like they're in their own movie of some sort. But I do believe that they expected all of those things to happen, and they are now completely flummoxed that none of them really did.
Now, Ebony, let me build on that, because I'm sure you have some rejoinders. Yeah.
You're fair-minded, though, too, right?
No, absolutely.
Is you fair-minded? Okay, just
okay, so let's take Tammy's supposition that, okay, it's the goal of the administration to win. Obviously, any political operation has to win. They have to do well, and they have to convince the American people that they're doing what's right for them.
Sure.
This has clearly been a disaster on that level for this administration. So aside from whether or not it was good or bad, just from a political perspective, why was this so bungled by the White House, or do you believe that it wasn't bungled?
I think it was clearly bungled, Nathan, and I think it's because, to Tammy's point, this administration seems to operate in an echo chamber. It's very, very unfortunately kind of self-reflective and narcissistic in that way. And it's disappointing to see, because I voted for the president twice, very much so based off of his vision for this country. And as someone who has voted for this president, what's disappointed me the most is his inability to stick to principle. Whether you agree or disagree with his approach, there's something to be said for strict political principle. And when this administration did this swap, this deal, which by definition is a negotiation, right? They're not adhering to one of our basic fundamental American principles when it comes to national security. And that's very disappointing to me.
Although you could argue that this is really a basic principle that the president set out in his campaigns, because he guaranteed the closure of Guantanamo Bay over and over and over again. And this may be a, hey, let's just get rid of these guys while we can, and then suddenly, oh, there's no more prisoners left, therefore it's closed.
Yeah, but it was a better way to do it. To me, you know, ultimately, I'd rather let them go for free than do it in this way, because again, you're doing it under the context, in the context rather, of a negotiation. And
so
that's
you wouldn't have done it because of the danger that is associated with the 5 Taliban guys that they let loose.
And we just don't negotiate with terrorists. It's that simple to me.
We do now.
Well, and that's the problem. That's a really nasty precedent
today,
that we're setting.
The AP is breaking today that the Taliban leader has announced, hey, we've got more kidnappings coming up.
Yeah, it's a precedent. We have
announcement.
set a bad precedent.
And that's horrifying. Time magazine was speaking with a Taliban commander. This just came out today that they've been in contact with for years over the Afghanistan conflict. And he said, this is great. And his phraseology is more birds. We want more birds like this one, rather than all those, I think what he said were useless people. So he's saying they have a ton of useless captives, but they've never managed to get so many of their top guys out.
Right.
So they're going to want more U.S. service members,
right.
even ones would be more valuable that aren't under a cloud of desertion, that didn't supposedly come and seek them out directly, as this guy may have done. Now, Scott, let me kick it back to you. Aside from all the controversy over Bergdahl himself, when the American people reacted to this, it was initially they were confused and they said, oh, okay, great. I didn't realize there really was a POW in Afghanistan. And then it very quickly turned as Dianne Feinstein came out, as other John McCain, high-ranking people started asking questions about the wisdom of releasing these particular guys. Now, do you think it makes the American people feel less secure knowing that they're on the loose? Or do you think it will eventually play well, as the president has started doing today with his "I will not apologize because we leave no man behind" rhetoric? Will that actually mitigate some of the damage for him?
Well, you know, first of all, I don't know who this Ebony is. Either she's some sort of a racist, or why don't you just put a tricorn hat on her and send her to a Tea Party rally for attacking the president in a manner like this? I mean, think about this. If you care about the war on terror, which is better to do with the high-value targets in that war? To keep them all, you know, cloistered in Guantanamo, where they'll be guarded and fed and given prayer rugs and Korans and made sure that their medical needs are taken care of, or to release them in some Middle Eastern country where the president can get them with a Predator drone? That's what this is all about. The president wanted to get these guys out of Guantanamo so that we could drone them. I don't know why anybody doesn't see this, and I really think we ought to reconsider inviting Ebony on this show. Her radical, you know, I think it's either racism or Tea Partyism. I'm not sure which it is.
Well, you're being somewhat facetious, but I honestly wouldn't count that out. The political damage has been so serious from this, and the people that the president needs to shore up support with are not the people on the left, who are going to like him no matter what he does to a certain extent, but the people in the middle and the people on the right. And a drone strike on a few of these guys wouldn't go amiss.
That was the plan all along. That's what they'll say after they hit these guys on some, you know, as they leave Qatar on their way to Yemen or whatever, and all 5 of them in a Toyota Corolla will get smoked, and then the president and everybody will say, yes, that's the wise president. That was his plan all along.
Okay, Tammy, let me take it back to you. Will the administration allow a court-martial, an investigation of Bergdahl once he comes back to U.S. soil, or are they going to try and put the kibosh on this to put this scandal to rest?
Well, you mentioned in your opening remarks that the town of Haley canceled their big event. I think the fact of the matter is he's not going to be going home anytime soon. I think that when they get him fixed up, whatever that's going to require, and they do some interviewing, the initial Pentagon report in 2010 found that he walked away.
Sure.
We're all hearing from his squad mates of not only that he walked away.
Yeah, more and more every day.
We know, again, the parents, he sent back his uniforms, as I've mentioned, before he walked away. His squad mates say that they heard a radio transmission that night saying that an American was looking for the Taliban.
That spoke English specifically.
So, look, we have Dempsey saying that there will be another investigation. So this young man, in all likelihood, will not be going home at all. So canceling that celebration was probably a good idea. Haley, Idaho, is probably the one element in all of this that's made a good decision in the midst of things.
Although they resisted it. The mayor didn't want to cancel the celebration, and he was sort of forced to.
Yeah, look, but see, this is where at least they're not mired in groupthink. So even a guy who was going to make a stupid decision had people around him that he listened to, unlike apparently the President of the United States. There's a reason why, let's say Obama is disappointing. A lot of people voted for him also thinking, well, this is a big system. he's going to have people around him who are going to keep him, because of his inexperience, from doing any damage. That apparently now is not the case. But to answer your question, yes, there is going to be an investigation, I think, with also now with the 6 men that we know died looking for him.
Yeah, some are saying as high as 13 or 14.
Widows coming forward. I think that it is going to be impossible to not have. What we don't want is politics stopping the right thing from happening here. And this transcends politics. I mean, this has nothing to do with party politics. The Democrats are trying to make it be that way, but ultimately this is about the American sensibility, and boy, you want to talk about Obama, he stumbled in this one seriously.
I disagree with you on one point, and that's everything is about politics. There's nothing that's not about politics or translated into politics. Now, Ebony, I have a question for you, and it's what's the fallout? This is essentially largely a lame duck presidency already. People are already shifting to Hillary, or they're looking forward at what they're going to do. A lot of the high-powered people that were in the administration have already left. And you've left with this core group that you were talking about that seem to be in an echo chamber where they're only hearing their own arguments rather than, they're like going blah, 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 blah when anyone else says something that they might disagree with. And I can understand where they got there, because if you're looking at Obamacare or all these other things, which frankly, they should have listened to some criticism on for their own benefit, but they hear so much criticism that they learn if we're going to accomplish anything, we have to sort of ignore a lot of that static. But will they be punished for this? Will the Democrats be punished for this? Or do you have so many Democrats that are walking away from it? I ask long questions, don't I? That are walking away from it, that as a party, they'll somewhat be inoculated from the damage.
I do think that we've seen for a while now, since kind of last October, several key people within the Democratic Party distancing themselves. It's been very deliberate, obviously, ahead of midterms and certainly ahead of looking to 2016. And I know we're going to get into Hillary and her place in all of this, but she's going to have to walk such a tightrope for so many different reasons concerning her involvement in the first part of the administration, but also how she is separate, different, and can offer something fresh and new going into 2016. And she's going to have to be careful about that for, yes, political reasons, but also even within the base. I mean, there was so much bad blood between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama going into 2008. And she seemed to be supportive. And even now, she's double speaking. On one hand, you're saying you support this trade, and on the other, you're saying that, but had it been me, I would have done it completely differently.
I'm wondering, how can she walk a tightrope if she keeps drinking Coronas? I don't think she can do the two at once, Ebony.
I agree.
Maybe she can do a tightrope if she has the walker.
Yeah, you know that walker. Oh, that was fabulous. We can't. People watching with the People magazine thing and all of that.
This was a picture on People magazine, the cover, where she was leaning against a chair, just a patio chair, and there are a few people.
It looked like a walker, and then all the conservatives started joking about it, and then the liberals freaked out, and Media Matters actually put up a picture of her saying, look, there's no walker. She's walking just fine.
Yeah, they had to refute the joke, which is good stuff.
Anyway.
Well, speaking of Hillary, and Scott, let's throw this to you as far as Hillary is concerned. She is seeming to speak out of both sides of her mouth on this issue. She's saying, on the one hand, I believe in the principle, the noble principle of bring every soldier home. But on the other hand, you have her, close advisors speaking to CNN and the Daily Beast, saying she raised strong objections when she was at the State Department. How does she handle this?
Well, I think this is a perfect opportunity for her to distance herself from President Obama, because the areas where he has been weak, frankly, she's stronger. And there's a story, I believe it was in the British Guardian. You can go to the website and check it out. Back in June 7th of 2012, there was a story that 5 Taliban detainees at Gitmo were going to be traded for this thing. So this deal has been in the works for at least 2 years, maybe longer. It didn't happen. My understanding is now that the deal that Hillary Clinton said no to was actually more restrictive on the Taliban than the current deal. I mean, I'll tell you, I am not one of these sort of reactionary guys on the right who every time the president does something stupid or malevolent that I cry impeachment. This is the first time I've seen anything where I thought, you know what is treason if not turning over to our enemy 5 of their high-value planners and schemers in exchange for somebody who's most likely a deserter, probably a traitor? How did, at the very least, how did you not know who Bo Bergdahl was? I am hoping beyond hope that we find out that he's not who we're hearing that he is.
So what's your take on it? Let me follow up on that. If this was such a blunder for them, why did they make it? What were they going for?
It is so stupid that I am desperately trying to come up with a reason that doesn't mean treason. I mean, how could you possibly do this? You cannot turn over to the enemy these top guys in exchange for essentially what is a very, very low-value person. Yes, we always get our guys back. Yes, Americans have died trying to rescue the corpses of their fallen comrades. I get that. But when you've got a guy who you think may have gone over to the enemy to be helpful to them, and you trade him for 5 top guys at Gitmo, I mean, really, was there nobody else at Gitmo? Was there not a cab driver at Gitmo that they could have released? And how does that deal work? Like, what kind of negotiation? You say, yeah, we'll let go of this. We'll let go of Bo Bergdahl. How do we get to the number 5 even? It is insane. And frankly, if everything we're hearing is true, it's treason and impeachable.
Well, and I think the difference, too, people have been arguing that we always make exchanges, you know, when hostilities are over. Problem is, hostilities aren't over here.
Right.
We're not dealing with a country.
That's right.
And the Taliban have even said hostilities are not over. So the president...
Well, it's because they're jihadists. They're religious warriors. This is not a political war. This is a war of ideology.
Well, he's replenished the fighting ranks of people who are still engaged in hostilities with us. And that goes to Scott's point about where do you draw the line.
And everything that's going on in Nigeria with Boko Haram, I mean, you'd think that we all agree that this was a stupid maneuver. I'm just trying to understand why.
The why, I honestly believe, again, because of this echo chamber, the president was convinced that this would upshore goodwill for this administration and the veterans of this country.
So it was political. You think it was purely political?
Well, it was in works for the past 2 years, so I think there's some truth to what Scott's saying as well. But I thought this was the timing that the administration thought was appropriate. Right. I also think it was thought about too that Jay Carney was stepping aside. And
sure.
I think it was all very much in alignment, and it was a misguided step, unfortunately yet another one by this administration to maybe go about the right thing. Yes, of course, this administration needs to bolster its credibility with the veterans of this country, but this was the wrong way to do it.
When you say alignment, definitely a misalignment for the president. It seems like absolutely everything has gone wrong for him with this procedure. All right, well, that's all we have time for today. Thanks so much to our After Hours panelists, Tammy Bruce. Filling in for Leo Terrell, we have Ebony K. Williams and Scott Ott. If you'd like to make a comment on today's show, you can do so in the comment section below. I'm Nathan Baker, sitting in for John Phillips, and this is After Hours. Thanks for watching.